What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. All right, let's move on to our mailbag, and then we're going to get out of here for the day. Hey, Jason, love your show. Have you noticed that almost all of the best teams in both conferences have most or all of their core players in their prime, 25 to 32? Denver, Boston, Cleveland, Minnesota, Phoenix, Dallas, New York, etc. OKC and the Clippers are the exceptions, but Shea is clearly in his prime as well as the Clippers' role players. Looking at Golden State and the Lakers, it's no coincidence that they've struggled so much since the Dubs only have Wiggins in his prime, and the Lakers just D'Lo and Reeves. AD is clearly on the decline since 2020. It seems that constructing a roster with all the core players on the same timeline is the biggest factor to winning, which means Oklahoma City, Orlando, and Indiana could dominate in the late 2020s. Curious about your thoughts on this. So a couple things. First of all, and this was a big thing that kind of stood out to me just watching Pacers Bulls. As the way the game has changed, the sheer amount of perimeter talent and speed has made it so that older teams, I think, struggle just to keep up defensively now in a way that they didn't used to. Like, you really got to get up for these games defensively against some of these quicker teams on the perimeter. So many teams around the league now are running 5-out offense. I won't get into it right now because we did like 2 summers ago. I think we did a breakdown on 5-out offense. But like the gist of it is in a 5-out offense, you're leaving the paint unoccupied and you're getting into the paint on rolls and drives. What that means is like your big man, whoever your vertical spacer is, he's operating out on the perimeter, running dribble handoffs and ball screens, and then rolling into the paint rather than waiting in the paint and then coming up to set a ball screen or waiting in the paint, to sit in the dunker spot. And then there's tons of different actions and entries. Like you can get into 5-out from pistol. You can get into 5-out from horns. You can do that kind of thing. But the gist of it is all 5 players are on the perimeter and the paint is left open so that guys can roll into it and guys can drive into it. And then from there, it's everyone's involved. They're interchangeable spots. All of your perimeter players are able to run a dribble handoff or to run a ball screen. Whereas like a 4-out offense is much more like, think about like what Dallas runs. It's much more of like a brute force, like our primary ball handler and our secondary ball handler, the 2 guys in the corner, they do nothing but shoot. And we're going to come and set a ball screen, and we're from the guy starting under the basket to come set the screen. It's just brute force basketball. And usually there's only 4 perimeter spots occupied. It's not equal opportunity. The guys in the corners are just in the corners. The guys up top are the guys running the action. And so that's kind of the difference. And as most of the league has gone into 5-out style of play, or at least it's trending in that direction, you had 5-out basketball with a ton of quick guards and a ton of speed and skill. All of a sudden, the dudes that are in their 30s, that their legs don't get as warm as they used to on a nightly basis, they struggle to guard. Now, that is something to keep in mind as well, though, when we get to the postseason, because when we get into the postseason, the effort gap shrinks, and then those veteran teams do have advantages in experience and skill. So I don't think it's smart to write off all those veteran teams, but I do think it's something to keep in mind when we're talking about regular season basketball. Older, slower teams are going to really start to struggle in the NBA regular season. I truly believe that. Next question. Hi, Jason. I'm curious to know how you assess off-ball 3-and-D cutting players. For example, archetypes like ball-dominant shot creators or rim runners, shot blockers. It's easier to see how they affect the game, and there's always the usual metrics that are used to measure their efficiency and usage. For the off-ball archetype, those usual metrics and eye tests don't always work. Just because you come off of these curl screens and backdoors doesn't mean you always receive the pass, or the passes and screens aren't great. Plus, your team context matters. If your team is a heavy ISO or post-up centric team, your effectiveness likely won't be as good or as a similarly graded off-ball player whose team is, say, drive and kick centric. Every championship team has prioritized off-ball threats, so quality players that fit this mold are super valuable. I just feel that often the archetype is undervalued in the draft, and perhaps a reason why it's not clear how to measure this style compared to other archetypes. Thanks again for all the content. So I think like when it comes to the way I look at it, we talked about 5-out offense a second ago. So let's take 2 offenses, for example. Let's take Golden State, 5-out offense, and let's take Dallas, more of a brute force 4-out, 1-in offense, right? In the role players you need in both systems are very different, okay? So 5-out basketball is primarily read and react. What that means is there's a ton of like improvisational basketball going on. I'm going to backdoor cut here when he's overplaying me, right? Like this is a two-man action coming off of the screen. If I see this, I slip. If I don't see this, I go over the top. Like if I see this, maybe I turn and pin down for the other guy to run off and then I slip or whatever it is. Like there's a lot of read and react basketball taking place. Same thing goes for the big guy on the ball, right? Like if he sees his defender sagging back and he has an opportunity to set a good screen, you want to throw the dribble pitch. If you see your defender showing high and the guy's chasing, you want to fake the dribble handoff and then turn and go to the basket. That's a read that Draymond Green's really good at, for instance, right? So everything in the 5-out is read and react. In the 4-out, 1-in, it's way less about read and react and way more about play finishing. What that means is like the only guy really making reads is the Luka or the Kyrie in that situation, right? He's got the ball. He's dribbling up at the left wing. He's calling Derek Lively to come up and set the screen. All of the other guys have the exact same job. Left corner, if it's Josh Green, he's spotting up. Right corner, if it's PJ Washington, he's spotting up. Kyrie Irving, second side creator, he's in the right wing. He's spotting up. Derek Lively is going to come set a ball screen. As soon as he sets a screen, he's rolling hard to the basket. Okay. If the action gets shut down, maybe Luka will swing to Kyrie. Luka will run back out to the left wing. Two guys will stay in the corner. Derek Lively will run up and set the next screen. It's the exact same damn thing, right? Like it's very brute force, right? So the only thing Derek Lively has to do is screen and roll hard and have the vertical spacing element. The only thing Josh Green needs to do is hit a corner three or attack a closeout. The only thing PJ Washington needs to do is hit a three or attack a closeout. Kyrie Irving, hit a three, attack a closeout, or if the ball gets swung to you, run the next ball screen. So it's super simplified. So what matters so much more in that 4-out, 1-in system is those guys that are spacing, can they knock down threes and attack closeouts? Much more simplified. For the screen and roll guy, does he have the ability to set good screens and roll hard to the rim and provide vertical spacing with good hands and verticality, right? Like, does he have those abilities? So like when I'm evaluating a role player for that system, I'm really going to be looking at things like, spot up points per possession, just like a simple thing that just evaluates how good this guy is at converting spot up opportunities. A guy who's a great spot up player is not necessarily a great read and react player. Those are two potentially different things. I'm going to be leaning on metrics a lot more there. For read and react, it's so much more about the eye test, in my opinion. It's so much more about watching a player play in his system, seeing whether or not he's good at interpreting what's happening on the floor quickly. And then if you're looking at him in free agency and you're a 5-out offense, maybe that's the kind of guy that you want to target. But again, read and react, everybody's got to be able to do so many different things versus brute force. I've got play starters and play finishers, and that's pretty much it. Hopefully that's an explanation that kind of hits at what you were getting at in that question. Have you noticed a change in NBA player shot making in the last 2 years? It seems like there's been a breakthrough in sports psychology, and these players can enter and stay in a flow state, allowing the offense and shooting efficiency to explode. Hope you can ask an NBA player if you ever get the chance. I will if we ever get an NBA player on the show. As far as shot making goes, I talked about this a little bit yesterday. Every single bit of shot making is actually just fundamental basketball attached in chains. What that means is, like, let's say, for instance, I hit a James Harden style, like in and out, crossover, aggressive step forward, step back to my left, pull up jump shot, right? Like, that's an advanced piece of shot making put together by James Harden, right? But if you really break it down, it's a hard in and out dribble. That's a fundamental thing. It's a crossover dribble. That's a fundamental thing. It's an advanced dribble with a hard right foot step to step back. I'm looking at it from James Harden. He's a lefty. I'm looking at it from me as a righty. But that hard right step forward and that step back, and then there's a footwork element to getting my base set so that I can go straight up and down on the move. And if I make the move properly, I will go straight up and down. And if I took a video of just the end of that shot, it's going to look just like a catch and shoot jumper. At least that's the way it is for me. So like that is a bunch of fundamentals attached together. There are certain things in basketball that have existed forever. And what's happening is NBA players are finding new ways to kind of daisy chain those things together and make new ways to score the basketball. It's like even like just the idea of like hitting 3-point shots in ball screens, which is a thing that used to just basically not be a thing in the NBA 15 years ago. And now it's a must for any sort of primary ball handler to be able to punish teams that die on screens or go under screens, right? Really, it's the same exact thing. Your high hesitation, which is a fundamental thing, and then, the defender got caught, or, I have maybe a little bit of space. If the defender got caught, I can just elevate from there. If I need to advance to get a little further up so that he can't back pressure, it's a one dribble pull-up. It's just a one dribble pull up. These are all fundamental things that people have attached together. But over time, everyone's got the existing manual from the last group of players. So like, the new generation learned from LeBron's generation. LeBron's generation learned from Kobe's generation. Kobe's generation learned from MJ's generation. MJ's generation learned from Bird and Magic, and so on and so forth. And so they're all just building on each other, and it's stacking and it's stacking, and that's how basketball players are getting better. Two more, and then we're out of here. Hey, Jason, can you explain how D'Lo's dribbling is legal? To me, as a relatively unexperienced fan, it seems like every few dribbles he holds the ball. Remember, he's not supposed to do that. And then he lets it go and it drops back to the floor. I hope you can picture what I mean. In my head, I see it clearly. Thanks for these mailbag sessions. I know you can't get to everything, but I wish you could, since I have a ton more questions. Keep asking them. Like, again, I'm not going to get to every single question, but we're going to keep doing them throughout the season. And so I will try to eventually get to as many as I can over time. Every NBA player carries. Like if you really slow down the ball handling for literally any, like some guys are worse than others. Like KD's another guy who like really kind of holds it under his hand when he does his high hesitation. But the thing is like it's legal by interpretation, meaning like the refs just allow it around the league. And so like, again, like I don't get upset about anybody around the league doing it because it's literally something that every single team has 2 or 3 guys that do, if that makes sense. Last question. After their 22 championship, you praised the Warriors for praised the Warriors roster building and patience, and you said that you appreciated that good process from owners, front office, and coaching staff, and even players that led to success. Do you feel like the Warriors are still abiding by that process, or do you feel like they've been winging it since things have gone south after the punch, especially after Bob Myers, who you praised in that June 22 video, left? If you do trust that they're still abiding by that process, JK has been balling, Moody's been good, drafting Brandon Podziemski and Trayce Jackson-Davis. How much of a chance, compared to back in 2022, do you give them to reach their ultimate goal again this year or next year? Or however long Steph, Dre, and Klay may still play? Couple of things. So first of all, I was critical of the Warriors during the 22 run just because I'm a big pusher chips into the middle of the table guy. I'm a big believer that like winning an NBA championship is super hard. And the last thing you want to do is lose in a series where you didn't have enough firepower and you had trade assets available that you held on to. And here's the thing, like the winner gets to tell the story. There's a version of that where they lose to Boston and you're like, we didn't play Jonathan Kuminga. We didn't play James Wiseman. We didn't play Moses Moody. This was a waste. We didn't get anything out of this, right? Like there's a version of that where that's what happened. That's not what happened though. Steph Curry was amazing in game 4. They won the series, and so now you get the trophy and you get all of the assets that come from it. From there, it's been tricky because they have not had enough firepower in the 2023 and 2024 season. Now, for the first year and a half of that stretch, I was a big advocate of making a trade because I thought Steph is still at the top of that, kind of 7 or 8 players in the NBA, and you got to give that dude a chance to win a championship because he's one of the rare players who's capable of doing it. But what happened is in the middle of this season, Jonathan Kuminga took a leap. And once Jonathan Kuminga took a leap, a real leap, a leap that makes you believe legitimately he can be probably the second best player on a championship team one day at some point in his career, once you see that, that changes the calculus. And now all of a sudden it's like whatever minuscule improvement we get through making some sort of trade, it actually makes more sense to kind of hang on to these guys and see how it develops. And so again, like there might have been a point before Jonathan Kuminga's, 7 straight 20+ point games or whatever. There might have been a point during that phase where it made sense to move him to try to bring in more firepower. But, at the end of the day, new information came into the equation. And now the Warriors are kind of in a situation where, like, here's the deal. Focusing on this season, do I think they have much of a chance? No. They don't have a legitimate secondary, like a reliable secondary option at this point in terms of a guy that you can count on for 4 playoff rounds to give you reliable scoring, which that was kind of Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole combined in the 2022 playoff run. Jordan Poole's not here anymore. And Klay Thompson is not the same player that he used to be. Andrew Wiggins is not the same player that he used to be. And so they just don't have the same amount of firepower that they had then. Even like little things like a guy like Otto Porter Jr., who was super valuable in that particular season, right? Like they just aren't as deep with like reliable playoff guys. That said, I still think it's a really encouraging time to be a Warriors fan because Jonathan Kuminga is so good, because Steph Curry still has years left, right? Because Trayce Jackson-Davis has been a revelation, because Moses Moody is a guy that can defend on the perimeter and has some off the dribble pop and can knock down spotted threes. Like they've got a lot of encouraging stuff. It's more of a big picture move at this point, where you're kind of hoping that you can overlap some of these young guys getting into their prime with the tail end of Steph's prime and maybe find a year in there where you can sneak to the top.